No, no, that.
You're welcome. We'll be checking
Some learned friends of ours that
Amen. The Public Secretary of the PDP.
Welcome to the Crystal Beam podcast on the Beam TV, where we shine a light on the complex issues that shape our nation. Today, we are diving into the heart of the law and the heart of humanity, following the recent controversial exercise of the prerogative of mercy by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. This constitutional power, which grants pardons and clemency, has sparked a fierce national debate. When should mercy overrule the strict demands of justice? Is it an act of compassion, or does it risk becoming an abuse of power? We'll break down the thin line between law and morality and draw a timeless lesson from the biblical account of the woman caught in adultery. Stay with us as we ask, when the court has delivered its verdict, who is truly qualified to cast the final stone? We are going to be discussing the unwritten rule, mercy law, and the president's pardon. Well, the president's power and public debate it's been on. Welcome back. The recent use of the prerogative of mercy by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, granting pardons, clemency, and sentence reductions, has ignited a firestorm. This is a constitutional power, but when it's used to pardon high-profile figures or reduce sentences for crimes like drug trafficking, it immediately begs the question: is this compassion or an undermining of the law? Well, the act. The president is empowered by Section 175 to grant mercy, often based on recommendations citing remorse, good conduct, and maybe old age, historical injustice. This is an official act intended to tamper justice with humanity. Now, let's look at the conflict. However, when names like Farouk Lawan or those convicted of drug offenses appear, the public cry out is, where is the deterrence? Does the risk reward criminality? This brings us to the core issue, the eternal battle between the letter of the law and the spirit of mercy. To understand the moral weight of this decision, we must turn to the ultimate story of judgment and forgiveness, the woman caught in adultery. The story of the woman caught in adultery is the perfect parable for this moment. The Pharisees brought her armed with the Mosaic law, which commanded stoning. The law was clear, the evidence was clear, and the verdict was predetermined. But there was a trap. They weren't seeking justice. They were setting a trap for Jesus. They forced him to choose between two laws, the divine and the Roman law. This is what we do to our leaders today. We ask them to reconcile two opposing moral imperatives. Jesus' intervention, well, he did not reject the law. He simply changed the executioner. His famous line, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone." Well, that shifted the entire focus. It reminded the court that the strict application of the law requires a moral purity that none possesses. Well, let's look at the lesson for Nigeria. It is profound. While the legal system must judge and punish, the ultimate authority, the president, has the moral duty to recognize human fallibility both in the condemned and in the judicial process itself. The prerogative of mercy, we are going to be looking at, of course, the morality behind the mercy. It's not just a constitutional clause. It is a check on the system's severity. It is the government acknowledging that justice must be restorative. Let's look at the justification anyway. Consider those released based on old age, terminal illness, or having served decades with impeccable conduct. This is mercy applied. The state recognizes the sentence has served its purpose, or that further punishment is simply inhumane. This is the moral high ground of the pardon. It is a sign of human state. Well, we may also look at the restoration mandate. The pardons granted to many were tied to their remorse and vocational skills. This mirrors Jesus' final charge to the woman: go, and from now, do not sin anymore. Mercy comes with a mandate for a changed life. It's about reintegrating a reformed citizen, not just freeing a convict. However, this act of grace treads a very delicate line, especially when political figures or notorious criminals are involved. But there is a thin line, the deterrence versus redemption. This is the heart of the controversy, the thin line between the law and morality. The law demands consistency and deterrence. Morality champions compassion and redemption. Now, what's the law's argument? Critics are right to demand that the law be firm. When a drug offender is released early, it can indeed appear to mock the efforts of law enforcement and erode public confidence in the judicial system's ability to punish white-collar crime. The rule of law must be seen to apply equally and fully. But there is the messy argument. The use of clemency for historical figures, like posthumously pardoning Ken Saro-Wiwa, is a different kind of moral act. It is correcting an undeniable historical injustice and driving national healing. In these cases, morality isn't defying the law, it is correcting a flawed application of law by a previous government. Now, what's the key difference? The question here is not if the president can pardon, but why. Is the motive political calculation or genuine? Dispassionate humanitarianism? Transparency is the only way to safeguard this power from becoming an instrument of injustice. Yeah, so what's the final verdict? Heart or hand? The president's use of prerogative of mercy shows that the highest office in the land recognizes that while the court and the hand of justice, the executive must be the heart of the state. The hand deals the punishment, but the heart grants the chance to live beyond that judgment. So what's the takeaway for listeners? We as citizens are the modern day onlookers. Before we pick up our stones of condemnation on social media, we must heed Jesus' call to reflect on our moral purity and our capacity for compassion. Do we seek to destroy the condemned, or do we seek to restore the citizen? The law is the essential structure of our society, but when the law is exercised without mercy, it can be tyranny. President Tinubu's pardon, complex and controversial as it is, serves as a powerful reminder. A truly just nation is one that knows when to enforce the rules and when to put the pen down and say, neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your Crystal Beam podcast on the Beam TV. Thank you.